Obviously AI has pretty heavily changed the accessibility of both imagery and writing. How are you seeing it
Yeah.
change, not from a casual use perspective, but seeing it change the professional space?
Well, I'd resisted getting into it for a long time. A buddy of mine told me about it back in January, but I was afraid it was going to damage my creativity. And I was also worried about copyright issues, which is a major issue why I said no. But then when I got into it, it astonished me really. It absolutely exploded my world. I mean, just bang. When I saw the opportunities, I became so excited I could hardly contain myself. And along the journey of this, I started getting brain dumps of information. I could wake up at midnight and I would get this huge dump of information. I don't know where it came from, but just enormous excitement when I saw what I could do because instead of limiting my creativity, it just augmented it in a huge, dramatic way. And I started to produce stuff. And as my friends and colleagues started to see it, they're going, wow.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of More Clients, Less Effort. I'm your host, Tim Hyde, and my guest today is prolific to say the least. Nathan Segal has been working as a writer, photographer, and computer artist for over 25 years, and in that time has written over 1,027 articles and published 13 books, including topics like consumer electronics, computer graphics world, database journal, Mac design, and web reference. As an associate editor at Web Reference for 5 years, Nathan was also responsible for managing and editing the work of a team of technical software writers and programmers from all over the world. These days, however, Nathan's main focus is on creating adult colouring books with AI and traditional drawing and painting techniques, as well as computer graphics. So, Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Mate, that is a lot of articles over a very long time. And I know your focus a lot now is leveraging AI from a graphic standpoint, which we're going to go into a bit later on. But I'm really interested to know how you got into writing so much and into that space.
I got fired from a job.
Okay, tell me more, right?
At the time, I'd moved from where I was, which was Vancouver, to Victoria to work for a school. And I'd been warned by some of my friends not to take it, but I was desperate to get out of Vancouver. So I took it. Bottom line is that my boss did not see eye to eye. He needed a victim for what he was doing. So he fired me. I had no prospects. I'm in a brand new city, nothing to do. And 2 weeks later, my cousin, Marty Waterman, came over and asked me if I wanted to learn how to write. Now, he had offered me this like 6 months before, but I turned him down because I was afraid I was going to be buried under piles of paper. And it turns out I was right about that at the time. But anyway, he came to me again. He made the offer and I had no prospects. And so I said, sure. He told me what to do. He took me down to the library and introduced me to something called the Gales directories and a couple of others. And I just started photocopying stuff out of these books on these huge flatboard photocopiers and looking up stuff and contacting companies. And I started to succeed. And that's how I got started. But I mean, at the beginning, like he wanted me to do a mind map, which I did on various topics, but I knew what I wanted, which was photography and computer graphics. At one point, he took me into his living room and he showed me a whole bunch of software boxes on a shelf. And he said to me, if you follow my instructions, you'll be able to do as good as me or better. And I remember thinking that he was full of it, but I kept my mouth shut. And then fast forward 5 years, I was in the middle of a relationship breakup and I was still getting software back in those days in boxes, right? Before everything went. So I went down into the basement because I had to get rid of all this stuff. And it was really humbling because at one point I realized I had 10 liquor store boxes full of software and manuals. And that's when I realized the bit of a start that not only had what he told me came through, but I went beyond him by light years in terms of what he told me. And it just went, oh, okay, I get it. But the other thing too is that he told me at one point that I'd become his number one protege in terms of what I was doing. But unlike many other writers that I met later, I had no excuses. He told me what to do. I did it. I didn't think I was smarter than him or anything else. I just did what he told me to do, and I started to get results.
Do you think there's, because authors and writers tend to have a more creative flair, do you think that creative flair sometimes gets in the way of success?
Might. I don't know. I mean, I used it as much as I possibly could. And at one point along my journey, I wound up going to art school, and I was able to use everything from art school in my articles, and it made me a better writer. But I don't know. I had lots of opportunity. And like when I was in art school, I was the only student there who was making money from my art while I was in school, writing articles. And I remember one of my classmates gave me royal hell, and he said, "You sold out." And I said, "How? I'm making money from what I want from my art. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm having fun. You tell me how I'm selling out." That shut him up in a hurry.
Is a purist and allowed to make money from art? It's for the betterment of all.
And I was the only one in school who was doing it.
Yeah.
And
why art for you? What was the attraction for art? Because I know a lot of the stuff you do isn't around that kind of more artistic side of stuff. What was it about that that captured your imagination?
It's a good question. I just enjoyed creating. And I mean, it started with model airplanes when I was a kid. And that later progressed to radio control airplanes. And there was all this stuff in painting and model building and blueprint reading and going to tech school and learning how to do all of that. And it was just my hobby. It just kind of morphed over time, but it's just something that gives me a lot of satisfaction. Like in terms of art, I really like making people happy, I like inspiring them. And when I got into the coloring book stuff, it seems like it was an accident, because what had happened at the time is like years before I'd been working with another guy, and we were doing adult coloring books, but the thing fell off the rails. I lost a bunch of money and I put it aside. And then a few months ago, I looked at it again and thought, geez, I wonder if I can make this work. And I looked at some of my drawings and I realized that they were crap. I went online, I started looking for a solution. I found a tutorial about how to create adult coloring books using Canva AI. And I just followed the instructions. And a few days later, I had a book. I published it on Amazon. I started talking about it in my marketing circles. And then I came up with a plan for building visibility and stuff, which worked. It's just been growing and growing. And then today, having a meeting with an influencer who was telling me what I was doing right, what I'm doing wrong. And it just turned into a really spirited discussion. And then I got that newsletter that I told you about the guy who made millions selling air. And it's a true story. And so there's just all this stuff. But the art, it just gives me a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment. And when I'm able to do stuff for people that they really like, that gives me additional drive to do more.
Yeah. What are the, obviously AI has pretty heavily changed the accessibility of both imagery and writing. How are you seeing it change, not from a casual use perspective, but seeing it change the professional space?
Well, I'd resisted getting into it for a long time. A buddy of mine told me about it back in January, but I was afraid it was going to damage my creativity. And I was also worried about copyright issues, which is a major issue why I said no. But then when I got into it, it astonished me, really. It absolutely exploded my world. I mean, just bang. When I saw the opportunities, I became so excited I could hardly contain myself. And along the journey of this, I started getting brain dumps of information. I could wake up at midnight and I would get this huge dump of information. I don't know where it came from, but just enormous excitement when I saw what I could do, because instead of limiting my creativity, it just augmented it in a huge, dramatic way. And I started to produce stuff. And as my friends and colleagues started to see it, they're going, wow. Like there was one major problem I was working with. I still haven't quite solved it, but it has to do with taking photos and turning it into line art. And one of the programs I use is called Midjourney. And I noticed that there was an ability to pop in a photo and use it as part of a prompt. And I did it with this one client that I had, and I had success instantly. I asked for a color image of this guy as a social media expert against a background of all the major social media brands, and it worked right away. It worked. And then I asked for another one, black and white drawing to do with other aspects of social media, and that worked immediately. And I showed the client, and he said, "Oh, yeah, great, but I don't have dreads anymore. Can you do it again?" And he gave me another image, and I wound up building a book for him that way. And it was just incredible, absolutely incredible. It creates like, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's just completely opposite from what you're asking for. But other times when it does work, you can get some really spectacular results.
Is that a function of getting the right prompt or engineering in to that kind of request in the first place?
It's a combination of prompts. It's experimenting. It's be willing to screw up, whatever that means. Like some of the images, there was one image he gave me, and I don't know why, but Midjourney turned him into a white guy and he's black. And I'm just going, can't use this for sure.
Yeah.
Went back to the image which was obviously him as black, and I turned it into a black and white photo so I didn't get it interference from the software, because sometimes it would spit out an image that was partially in color. And I'm just going, how am I going to deal with this? But it was actually really easy. You could do it in Photoshop or another third-party program I use called Photopea. And all I did is I took the image out of Midjourney, brought it into Photopea, and just went under the settings, adjustments, hue, saturation, and I took the saturation to 0, and then one step, boom, totally black and white drawing. Saved it out and away I went. So
yeah, you touched on copyright there. What are the copyright issues that people need to be aware of when they're using either content or images generated by AI?
Well, the major issue would be is not to, I mean, it's a hard question to answer because you don't know what the companies have trained their AI on. And one of the things that I've been reading is that they've been training their AI on the work of artists where they didn't have permission to do it. And in my opinion, that's fraud. It's copyright infringement. And if an artist sues the AI company over that, I think they're well within the rights to do it. But in terms of people as creators, haven't a clue because I've got no way of knowing where some of this stuff is coming from. But then again, I'm also creating custom prompts, and how far that goes in terms of sampling from where, I haven't a clue. But the one thing that's been happening, which has been really cool, like my first book, I published it on Kindle. And the interesting thing about it is they ask in there, did you use AI? And you have to say yes or no if you did it. But the one thing they were saying is, if you use AI on an image that you've already created, then it's not a problem. You're just augmenting stuff you've already got. But if you're using it AI solely to create stuff, you have to mention it. And other than that, it's fine. And I wound up working on a job for a client, which was about robot heads and wires trailing out the back. And rather than trying to figure it out the old way, I used Midjourney, created a whole bunch of images, sent them over, and I really didn't expect the response I got. The publisher loved one of the images. And at that point, I needed to tell him that it was AI. And he said, I don't have any problem with that. And if the author doesn't have a problem with it, we're good to go. So it turns out the author, who's a friend of mine, loved it and loved the fact that I was using AI. There was no negative reaction at all. And it's like, let's go forward. So you just don't know.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things when we look at AI, and technically it's artificial intelligence, right? But we need to revisit what AI means to us as business owners and creators of whatever it is we're doing, whether it be policies and procedures, whether it be content, whether it be art, whatever it happens to be, plans and so on. It's more augmented intelligence. And I have this little bit of a joke that says us making smart people smarter and dumb people dumber since 2023, right? Because if we don't ask the right questions, and we're actually going to augment our intelligence and augment our productivity using these tools. But if we don't ask the right question, we don't get the right result.
And that's true. So like when I did my first book, I was getting results, but I wasn't happy with them. And it wasn't until I finished the book and then I went on and bought a subscription in Midjourney and then also did a lot of research into the prompts that I found a bunch of prompts to do that on coloring books. And the very first time I used it, I had immediate success. And I started getting exactly what I wanted right from the word go. And most of the time it works fairly well. Sometimes not. But when it doesn't work, depending on what the image is, I can use a program like Photopea or Photoshop to retouch the image. And I have a lot of experience with image manipulation. Like I wrote a book years ago about that, and tons of articles on it. So it's like, for me, it's not very difficult. So I have a good idea of what to do and how to fix things.
If someone was to start looking at doing some of this themselves, and I think the use of imagery to augment text is incredibly powerful, and because it hits multiple different learning styles as well. What should people be looking at in terms of either using images or using AI images to augment written text?
You just got to try it. See what happens. I mean, there's so many unpredictable things. And like one of the things I learned about recently had to do with character generation, because that's a big part of what I'm starting to do now. Midjourney just gave instructions, but it also talked about taking a photo and turning it into a character. But I didn't do that. I used a straight photo in Midjourney And so it makes me wonder about the instructions because they didn't seem to be entirely accurate. And I think what I'm going to have to do is write to the folks in Midjourney and ask them about it. But I also wrote to another company that produces a program called Leonardo. And I asked them about that because one of the things that you can do, like in terms of copyright issues, is you can train the AI using images that you've got. So if you have a bunch of photos of your face, you can train the AI on how to use that photo so that you get results that you really want. Now, how close it's going to get to what you have in mind, I don't know. That's another story. The only way to find out is to experiment. But when I started working with some of the images for this guy, I started getting great results, but some of them were way off. And that's when I learned about different controls that you can put into a Midjourney, like -CW, which has to do with creativity and on a scale from 0 to 100. And the author of this article is saying the creativity level of about 80 gives you some really good results. So 100 is like, don't deviate from the original, and 0 is like super creative and you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So you really.
Yeah, it is that experimentation to, put some time aside and go upload an image, create something from scratch.
Yeah, like don't worry about screwing it up,
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a step between, because I know I've tried this myself to create business logos, at least get some ideas around business logos to then send off a designer and say, I like the direction that this one's going, but please recreate it. Things like Midjourney, you can't really just use the image as is, can you? Because it's not going to give you your sort of transparent backgrounds and your PNGs and everything. Or is that thing possible though using those tools?
Well, transparent background, like I've not tried it with Midjourney, but I know that you can do it in Canva. There's some settings where you can bring a photo in and remove the background. And according to one of my colleagues, he said it does a wonderful job. It's really good and very fast. And as for saving files, I'm just trying to think how I save them. Actually, I just download them straight from Midjourney. I can't recall any particular format because what I'm doing with every file that I get from Midjourney, at least for the most part, is I bring every single one of them into Canva and I resize them on a document that I use in Canva. And then Canva's got a setting that if you want to do coloring books and stuff like that, it's called print to PDF. And when you print it, it gives you a phenomenal result. It works beautifully. And I don't have any knowledge of the pixel size, but typically if you want print, you want that kind of result, it has to be 300 dots per inch in order to look good. And I did my coloring book entirely in Canva, and I just told it what I wanted it to output as, and it worked. And I've had people, like one woman in particular, who's one of my fans, she took a picture of her daughter holding the book, and it looked fabulous to me. Some great tools in it that way.
Yeah, it's the combination of tools. So using AI, create the ideation and raw materials and the base, and then kind of finish in things like Canva and other tools. And Canva.com, awesome tool. I've been using that for a couple of years myself to create all sorts of things, from pitch decks to images to removing backgrounds, slide decks, and all sorts of stuff. And I think if we're looking at how do we communicate with our audience, with our customers and so on, using tools like that to create all sorts of different stuff can be incredibly powerful. It's augmented by the right image at the right time.
Yeah, it's true. Like some of the books that I've created have images that either look real or as close to real as you can get. Like one of the ones I did a while ago for a colleague of mine had to do with the topic of baking. And so I asked Canva to create a full color image of a guy to do with baking chocolate chip cookies. And man, it's a beautiful image. And then inside the book, like I asked him for themes to do with baking. I said, well, baking a pie, baking a cake, cutting strawberries for a pie in it, and did all of that in Midjourney. Like one of the images I got, it had the strawberries, but it added color to them. And I went, but I knew how to fix it. So I just went straight into Photopea again, and I just desaturated it, and that was the end of that.
Talk to me about the process you use Midjourney, and I'm sure you've tried a number of other tools to create images as well. Midjourney on Discord is incredibly good, right? And very reasonably priced as well if you want to get your own private server, which I would recommend if you're going to get serious about creating your own images. It makes it much easier to find later, doesn't it? What is your process for creating an image prompt?
Well, right now, it depends on the nature of the prompt. As whether I'm going to do a full color image or whether I'm going to do black and white. Primarily, what I've been doing is black and white line art. I need to make a distinction between line art and what's the other, sketching, because like colorists do not want sketches. They want strong black and white lines. It's very much a part of the prompt. And I think to answer your question a little bit better, I'm just going to take a bit of a
Let's look at an example. Let's look at an example
yeah,
of
well, that's
prompt
exactly
on
what I'm
Midjourney.
doing. I'm going to Midjourney right now, and I want to look at some of the prompts that I've got. So, like a book here, okay, with this one client, I'm not going to mention his name, but I was using a reference photo, black and white photo.
Okay, so you've uploaded that reference photo into Midjourney.
Yeah, I did.
Yep.
In terms of the prompt, coloring book page, name of the client, showing an audience how to train their brains, strong lines, black and white. And so that didn't work out all that well, but let me go to one of the images that I did here that did work out fairly well. Let me see here. So coloring book page, realistic image of X standing in front of an Instagram logo on a wall, giving a presentation to people, strong lines, blah, blah, blah. And it was pretty good, but it wasn't as good as I would have liked. I'm going to go all the way down.
What I'm picking up from that is that we've got the more descriptive that we can be in the prompt, the more
That definitely helps. Like,
yeah.
When I went to the very beginning of this, when I started the series again, so I had a color photo of him, which I later turned to black and white for the line art, the black and white line art. But this one I said realistic image of X standing in front of all the social media platforms, full color social media mastery. And it popped up 4 images and they were just freaking outstanding. They were really good. It looked like him. I mean, I don't know if I could show your listeners something like this. I don't think we can we?
Well, we can pop it up. We can probably pop it up if you want to share your screen. We can definitely show our YouTube audience. YouTube, subscribe there as well, so you can see what Nathan's sharing on YouTube. But one of the things I love about it, and I've played around with a little bit as well, is that you can put yourself into all sorts of stuff. I had a bit of fun, or a mate of mine had a bit of fun with it. Putting me as a rugby player for the Wallabies. Oh, there you go. Okay, yep. So we've got, for our audience, we've got a young, handsome-looking fellow, yellow jacket, bunch of social media icons on the background. It is a little bit cartoony in style rather than photorealistic, but you can do all sorts of really interesting stuff with the country. You can actually make very photorealistic sorts of things.
It is.
All sorts of
scenarios.
It is
for a coloring book after all, so it's not supposed to be entirely realistic, but I don't know how much you can see on this page. Like some of these images, these are the ones where I wound up with the yellow in them, but I was able to fix that really easily in Photopea. Like these are some of the other images. This is one of the better ones here. Some of them were not as good as I would have liked them to be, but a lot of them were really good. Like I gave him this one. He really loved that one. And there are just all these different ways of, this is where I got the white guy, which was definitely not a match. But some of them were really quite good. Like this one here and this one on the right here. So these are all the ones that went into the book form. This one here, or sorry, not this one here, this one on the left, which is better. But anyway, but you get an idea of what I've been doing.
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing about that, and particularly from a marketing context. I've certainly noted when I've started using, rather than just plain text posts in my social media, that if I include a photo of me doing some activity, right? And literally I think I gave most of my team probably 150 odd photos of myself doing various activities.
Well, I got to start trying that out.
Riding a horse or walking along the beach or whatever it happened to be. And we have one of these things in our pocket, right? We have, everyone's got one of these little things in our pocket these days that can take very, very good photos. They're not necessarily going to be the same professional photos that you would get of the fancy DSLR and lighting setup and everything else as well. But you can create pretty serviceable and pretty good photos with your iPhone or with your Samsung, or if you've got a Tesla phone. I think there's a new Tesla phone out there that does pretty good images as well. You can take good photos and you can kind of stick them into a tool like Midjourney to create some really interesting and creative variations with the background, with your pose, with your kind of clothing and so on, to actually create more engaging content for people to go, right, oh, that's interesting, that's a little bit different, and stuff like those sorts of things.
It also helps to have a really good idea of what you're doing when you go into it. I just want to go back to Midjourney again very briefly. I was talking with you earlier. There we go. I'm going to scroll down quite a ways here, because I was working with this one client for the artificial intelligence. So these were some of the things that I came up with. I was using a reference image of a mask, quite literally, that I did in 3D. But I started out, like it was wanting a head with the wires trailing out the back, and I wanted this particular viewpoint here. And I created a whole bunch of them, as you can see, experimenting with different backgrounds and positions. But this is the one, I'm just going to size it up. This is the one that they really liked. And she's looking in the direction where I want her to look. And there's all this stuff here. And it was like an instant hit. But then you look at the prompt: full color, realistic, female human head with hair looking directly towards the viewer. The head is open at the back, and you can see wires trailing behind against a neutral background. So it gave me almost exactly what I was after. But I had to experiment with it quite a bit to get the result. But you get the idea. And it's just, I've fallen in love with AI in a major way. And like, in terms of this journey, if you were to ask me about it, sometimes the excitement is so intense from the incredible possibilities. Sometimes I feel like I've been strapped to a rocket that's going straight up, hurtling into the heavens and gaining speed with every second. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, considering
we're
only really a couple of years into our AI journey, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic tools, and I love the choice of imagery. And again, if you're listening, head on over to YouTube. Look up More Clients, Less Effort on YouTube. You'll see the channel there, and you'll be able to check out some of the images that Nathan's been sharing with us. But I think when you create images like that, they kind of, and this is what really good writing and really good choice of imagery does, it creates a more emotive connection with our audience. And wherever you're using it, I don't care whether you're using social media content, whether you use it on your website, your pitch deck, your presentations from stage or whatever, if you've got that content in there, it does create, and this is stuff that was previously very, very inaccessible. You had to go and hire a design studio to go and create some of this stuff. It's made the accessibility of this much more readily available to a lot of people to kind of create more emotional connection with their audience.
Yeah, I mean, prior to that, you would have to do it the old traditional way. You'd have to build all the models yourself. Mind you, recently one of the aces in the hole that I had on this is a third-party 3D program called Blender. And I did some research and I found that I could get access to different models of heads that would either be like a full Android head or color image head. But the other thing too is that in Blender, you can get all these add-ons. And one of the ones that I found was trailing wires. And I thought, well, if I'm really hard pressed, and I saw some of the samples of it, I thought, well, if push comes to shove, I'll figure out how to build it the old traditional way, but it's going to take time. It's not like Midjourney or some of the other programs, but again, you still have to experiment and see. Like, it didn't come up with that immediately. It took me a little while. It's all part of the journey, and be willing to play and be willing to muck up. But you keep playing with it. And a big part of this thing is prompt engineering. So part of that is you learn that. But the other way of doing it is there are all sorts of sites. Like, I found this site with like 55 Midjourney prompts. And you look through it, you look at the prompts, and then you look at the images, and you get an idea of what it can do. And then you try it out, and then you start putting in your own parameters and stuff and seeing what happens. And it's worked really well for me so far.
Yeah, the other thing there is it's actually quite a lot of fun to play with.
That too. Well, yeah, that's the other thing.
It is a deep rabbit hole, but it is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
as you go down it.
Yeah, it can be. But you reminded me of something that's really important. You got to give yourself permission to play. It's like a kid in a sandbox, right? But this highly intelligent and very powerful sandbox, or it would be like, well, you remember an Etch-a-Sketch?
Yeah.
Those things, like, well, imagining that you have a super powerful thing like that and you just tell it stuff and boom.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun if you want to disappear for a few hours. We're going to finish up the show now with a bit of a pivot into a quick fire round. As always, there's a $1,000 prize on the line if you get all the questions correct, which you should do because they're actually your answers and there are no incorrect ones. Let's start here and go with this one. If you could start another business tomorrow, what would that be?
I would actually continue with what I'm doing, but I would just expand on it. I would just keep going with the AI because there's so many possibilities with it. I don't know. I just really like it. I don't want to be anywhere else but in the world of art.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done many, many other things like commercial flying and writing, and I'm working as sales in a jewelry store and all sorts of stuff. But the art is what I really wanted more than anything else. And I made a major mistake years ago, which kept me from it for many, many years. But I was watching a video to do with Jim Carrey talking about his dad, who wanted to be a comedian, but chose the safe route of being an accountant. 12 years later, he got fired, and it turned the family upside down. And Jim Carrey he said something which changed everything for me. He said, I'd rather fail at something I love than something I hate. And that made my decision on the spot. That's when I made the decision. That's it. I'm working in art. I'm not doing anything else for the rest of my life. If I can possibly do only art, that's all I'm going to do. And there's so many different facets of that.
Yeah. What's one thing about your career that you didn't expect?
Coloring books. I didn't expect this stuff with the AI. Like, I've been working with a coach, and he was saying to me, you have your vision, but you need to be open to things coming from a different direction. And so this showed up, and it was not what I expected at all. But I started to see opportunities that I really didn't expect, and I just went with it. And all of a sudden, it started opening doors all over the place. And when I show a lot of people what I've done, they get really excited, and they start seeing the potential. And then talking with this coach today, who's also a friend of mine, she was telling me some stuff, and she said, the problem you've got is the way you're packaging it, and I can help you with that. And she understands internet marketing, which is also part of my background. And it just sparked a really lively discussion. And what can I tell you? I really love art, and that's where I want to stay.
Yeah. How would you like to be remembered?
Somebody who's brought a lot of joy and inspiration to the world and beauty to the world through the art that I do.
Where do you get your inspiration from?
My inspiration? Sometimes looking at stuff that other people create, but other times I wake up and I have an idea, and I go online, and that's that way I get it is I start looking for resources and see what I can find. It's like when I got into the coloring books, I was looking for a way to solve my image problem, and I ran into this tutorial, and that's what got me started on that. And then I started learning about other programs from people around me, and I kept hearing about Midjourney, and I bought it, started experimenting, and one thing led to another, really. I mean, I look at stuff by other artists, but not all that much. Most of what I see is coming from me. It's just my ideas. And I look at the odd piece and go, oh, that's cool. Or I just try something in one of these programs. It produces a result, and going, wow, that's really cool.
In deference to Monty Python, what is your favorite color? And what does it say about you?
That would be cobalt blue. And well, cobalt blue, and it bounces back and forth between cobalt blue and Prussian blue, but cobalt blue is actually it. It has to do with a large part of my history where I got into doing space paintings. And back in the day when I was doing it, I was using an airbrush and doing all of these things by hand. I later realized that these blues, especially Prussian blue, is something that I've seen many times to do with the spiritual journey and meditation. And it just draws me like a magnet.
Yeah. If you were to go to an exhibition of art at a gallery, who would be your favorite artist that you would line up to see?
Kandinsky. Love his stuff.
How long did it take you to see success?
Well, I'm still working on that. In terms of art, I'm right at the beginning. In terms of writing, didn't take long. A few months, I started to see some success, but I realized that I wasn't where I wanted to be. In terms of writing, I'm just trying to think. I started in 1998, and when I started to see some of the success I wanted, it was about 2006. That's when I learned about internet marketing, and that changed everything.
It certainly has. In your opinion, what is the most crucial personality trait or strength someone would need to be a successful artist?
You need to go to art school and learn how to see as an artist. That's what one of my close friends told me. Now, at the time, I thought he was full of it, like my other friend, and I fought it for years. And then I had an opportunity to go to school. I went to a summer course, and I was drawing some pretty good stuff. And I realized that one of my major problems was impatience as to why I wasn't doing well. But then I signed up for full-time art classes for, not full-time, but close, for 3 years. And midway through the second year, like my friend kept saying to me, you need to learn how to see as an artist. Midway through second year, I was doing the painting of the chair sculpture from hell, which was literally all these spindle chairs stacked together. And we had to do it in a certain way. And I remember standing in one spot for a solid hour like this, doing the measuring that I learned how to do with perspective, like learning how to draw in perspective, which I also learned in second year, which is an enormous gift, because when I learned that, I knew that I could draw anything I would see, because it gave me all the tools to do it. But then the learning how to see, I was just standing there doing that for a solid hour and measuring all these things and putting it on my canvas. At one point, I felt a shift and felt something drop into a slot, and my entire world changed. And at that moment, I knew how to see as an artist. And that ability never left me. So if you were saying to me right now, it's like, well, an example, and my camera interferes with some of this because of my background, but I've got this cup.
Yeah.
But if you ask me to look at a cup as just an ordinary person, that's how I see it. But if you ask me to look at this as an artist, I see there's an instant shift that takes place, and I see something entirely different. And I go into a completely different way of functioning, and I know what to do. I know how to make it work.
Love that. Love that. To finish off, Nathan, what's one initiative on your whiteboard that was not there 30 days ago? Like a plan or a goal or a...
Oh, well, one thing I've known for quite a while is I need a mentor. I need a coach to help me with marketing. And this friend of mine, when she showed up, it's like, okay, because I know she can help me. And it was just one of those really illuminating discussions, and it was really great. And she said some stuff to me that I really needed to hear. And it's like, okay, let's see where that goes. But I definitely need a mentor for what I'm doing, because this art that I'm doing, I've never done anything like it. And I've been stumbling along, like trying to find, like, how do I package this? And I know she can help me. So here we are.
And thanks so much for sharing your insights and your experience in creating art using Midjourney and your journey with us today. Lots of really cool stuff there. And guys, if you haven't gone and checked out Midjourney and some of the other art creation tools that exist, the interface I noticed has changed since I was on it just recently as well, Nathan. They do that fairly regularly as they to improve the user experience and interface. But if you want to go and check out some of Nathan's work, head on over to Image Magic Design, Nathan's business, which you can find at nathansegalart.biz, not to be mistaken with Steven Segal, of course, Nathan Segal.
Actually, just point to, it's actually Segal.
Segal, sorry, S-E-G-A-L.
It happens all the time. Every time
we're going to put those links in the show notes anyway, so that we get that right. You can find Nathan on both Facebook and Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn as well, and go and check out some of the work that he's doing for his clients. Really, really good stuff. Thanks so much for sharing your insights today with us.
My pleasure. Nice seeing you again.
Guys, if you've enjoyed today's show, if you've got some value of it, if you know someone who's looking to create some art and might get value from the insights we've shared today, please share the episode, like, subscribe, give us a review as well if you're enjoying the show, and we look forward to seeing you on another episode real soon. Take care.